Second Vatican Council, at least for a few years before that, there were three mysteries were celebrated at Epiphany in the Western Church. In fact, you still, in the antiphons for some of the scriptures, antiphons for Vespers and for lauds or a morning prayer, you'll find a reference to these three mysteries: the Magi, wedding feast of Cana, and the baptism of Jesus. In Hebrew tradition, in fact, if you look in the Hebrew scriptures, every prophet had an inaugural experience, something powerful that happened by which he was designated to be this particular prophet. Isaiah, for example, his call took place in the splendor of the temple, where he saw the seraphim and the cherubim calling to each other, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." And he heard a voice saying, who shall I send? And he says, "Here am I, send me." Amos was a dirt farmer in the 8th century Palestine. He didn't want to be a prophet, but God called him, and he had an experience. He says, "Look, I didn't want to be a prophet, but God called me." Jeremiah was called as a very young man, and he complained, I can't put two words together, I can't speak, and I'm too young, nobody's going to believe me anyway. And God says, "You will go, I will be with you." So the baptism of Jesus is really the beginning of his public ministry. It is his call as the prophet, with capital P, and is a call. So what is his call? His call, of course, in the waters at the time of his baptism, the heavens are opened, and here's the voice, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." Probably that's a quotation from the 40th chapter of Isaiah, the first verse, the beginning of the suffering servant poem. So he is designated to be the suffering servant of the Lord, but he is also the Son of God. We are to listen to him. Jesus was baptized. We say, well, why was Jesus baptized? He had no sin. Right. And besides that, the baptism of John the Baptist was for the admission of sin, but it had no special effect. But Jesus is baptized in order to identify with sin. In his baptism, he takes upon himself the sins of the world, and he shreds those sins. The scriptures tell us they are nailed to the cross. So this is the beginning of his entire public ministry. As we used to celebrate the baptism as a part of Epiphany, so now it is a separate feast, and then it comes the Sunday after the celebration of Epiphany. What is the message for us? Well, it calls to mind our baptism. We are called to be sons and daughters of God. We are called to identify with sinners, not to sin, but to lead all people to the glory of God. And we are called also, you may remember that immediately after Jesus' baptism, he went into the desert and he was tempted. We're going to be tempted, even though we are children of God, even though we're heirs of heaven, even though we have sin is taken away from us, still we're going to probably suffer something, and we're going to be tempted. So we need to, on this day, to renew our own baptism as we begin to go through the church year with the Lord.